All right, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here. We're going to share with you sort of how we're leveraging STEAM and ELD together in South San Francisco Unified. If I can move the slides. There we go.
So my name is Nahal Asgari, and I am one of the elementary English learner TOSAs in our district. We, like Jennifer said, we are at South San Francisco Unified School District. We have 15 schools, 9 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 2 high schools. And we serve a pretty diverse student population with approximately 9,000 students, and about 40% free and reduced lunch, and about 30% are English learners. And that 30% is not including our students that have been reclassified.
And I am Jennifer Rosse, and I am the K-8 Science Curriculum and Instruction Specialist. And Nahal and I have been working together to sort of try to integrate what we're doing together for STEAM, and then we'll tell you more about our plan. So we're essentially just sharing with you where we are on our journey right now.
Okay, so maybe we're going to take just a couple minutes to type in the chat. We just want to get a feel for who's joined us today. So our first question you can ignore. Our second question is your experience with language development. So a 1 being beginning and a 5 being an expert. And number 3, your experience with NGSS. So 1 beginning and 5 expert. So if you can type in the chat for those 2. Okay, thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Daisy. Okay. Clara.
All right, thanks for sharing. It looks like there's various experience between ELD and NGSS. And thanks for sharing also what district you're in. Sorry, we didn't update that from our PD last week.
Oh. Okay, so just to reiterate our outcomes for today, we are going to, we basically want to show you how Jennifer and I have been working together, and we want to present to you how we're trying to use science as a catalyst for language development and teaching language through content. And one of our main goals with our teachers is really showing them how these two are already compatible, no matter the language level of their learners. And we also just want to show them the areas within the science content, so build their science knowledge, and also show them easily the areas within the science content that they can implement language development. So one of the quotes, I'll read it aloud. As English language development researchers note, students do not need to wait until they learn English in order to engage in scientific thinking and complex scientific content. So they can go hand in hand, and we want to bring that to our teachers.
And then I'll just add one thing. One thing I love to do is bring in research whenever I can to support the work that I do in the district, and to support, teachers and getting buy-in from whatever stakeholder we're working with. So if you haven't checked out this article, I linked it in. Actually, maybe I should put the slide deck in for you. I will put that in just a minute in the chat. Check it out because it's a good resource, and it kind of lays out like a roadmap how to use science as a leverage for ELD to support high engagement for learners and language development. I'm going to talk about the norms. So you guys are all adults and you've been to a million Zoom meetings this year, but we wanted to share our norms. So stay curious, ground statements and evidence, assume positive intention, engage fully. You might be on summer break already, so if you are, thanks for being here. Be a collaborative learner, see mistakes as gifts, and take care of yourself. If you need to take a break, just please take one.
Okay, so we are going to first talk about kind of how we got started with this. We have a summer STEAM program going on, and Jennifer's the STEAM expert, and then we had a couple, myself and another language TOSA, working together. It's our 5th year of implementation, and the unit is focused on energy for the summer for all grade levels. There are STEM challenges that they do. We aim for at least one per week. And Jennifer will go into the importance of having like quality over quantity, basically, with the STEM challenges and the steps with that. Obviously, our number one goal this summer is high student engagement, hands-on learning, restoring their interest in school. Our middle and high school students did not go back at all this year, so they have not been in school for 15 months. And our elementary only started going back in April for 2 hours at the end of each, 4 days a week for 2 hours, like April 19th, and we got out end of May. So they had about a month. And our goal is NGSS, language development, literacy, reading, and collaboration, just really connecting those two and showing our teachers how those two can coexist throughout their day. And I'm going to let Jennifer talk about the positive identity.
So also in the notes of this page, if you have the deck open, there's a link to something you can register for. Actually, maybe I'll just show you if I can get out of this. There we go. So there's some research that's come out that I find really interesting, and it's about the achievement gap, like attributing part of the achievement gap. I don't really know how they do this research, but to essentially racial stereotyping bias, or in other words, in particularly higher poverty schools, Title I schools that serve students of color, students not developing a positive identity about themselves as scientists, engineers, mathematicians, artists, etc. And so if you're interested in learning more, I emailed to get the actual research to share it with you today. I didn't get it, but there is some information here. On June 25th, you could join this. Dr. Jeffrey Borman is actually doing the research, and he's talking about some ways, I think, to sort of mitigate that happening in schools, which is really interesting. So that was another sort of goal of the program this summer, is to help students to develop positive identity as scientists, engineers, mathematicians, and artists. Okay. All right, so we're gonna just walk you through very briefly, since these are short sessions, a recent teacher PD that we did. So you can hopefully take some strategies away in terms of integrating STEAM and ELD. So just last week, we did our STEAM summer school PD, and one of the pieces of that was to take the teachers through a model lesson, and it was the catapult challenge. So if you're familiar with STEAM, you've probably done the catapult challenge a lot of times, but it's important for teachers to have this shared experience, and then we took them through essentially experiencing it themselves. So they had a student hat they would put on sometimes, and then a teacher hat. So then we would sort of, after they experience it, talk about the teacher moves or instructional moves that would support whatever pieces, the STEAM, the NGSS, or the ELD. So here is just, so you have an idea of what they did. That is the page there. And the teachers essentially move through this, the engineering design process. together. It was all virtual, not as much fun as in person, but you know, they had their materials and they were engaged. This, as Nahal said, this program has been going on for a while, and I am newer to this position, so I got to sort of look at it and think about how to support teachers to learn more about NGSS while also doing the STEAM summer program. And it really isn't a three-dimensional unit that they're doing, but the engineering design challenges link very closely to the SEPs. So for this, and Nahal talked about a little bit earlier, for this, it's about a month-long program. We really encourage teachers to go deeper in some areas. Engineering, you know, can focus on all 8 of the practices, but we really tried to help them focus on integrating the SEPs with authentic language development in the areas that are bolded. So asking questions and defining problems. You know, there's evidence that shows that students who are able to generate good questions are more active participants and are better at learning. So it's one of those skills is going to transfer across other content areas. Developing and using models. They're making those. They're, you know, as they design things and build things, they are making models. Constructing explanations for science and designing solutions for engineering. So that's another place where we felt like language development is clearly linked to that. Obviously, constructing explanations and then communicating that information. You know, we can be really good at whatever it is we do, but if we can't really communicate that information or our learnings to other people, then it's all for naught, kind of. So really teaching and scaffolding students to be able to do that was another place we saw a really clear connection for language. And then I'm probably behind, so this will be quick. In this program, the DCIs sometimes connected and sometimes didn't. I find that with engineering challenges, again, sometimes they connect, sometimes they don't. In this particular one we did, we could focus on the physical science, force and motion. But what I do with teachers is help them to not only know their standards for their grade level, but also look at the matrices. So those are linked in below for you. And you can click into that because for teachers, I think it's really important for them to sort of know these progressions. I will open it up real quick so that they can see essentially where students are coming from and where they are now. Let's say they're a 4th grader, and then where they're supposed to be going, so they understand that as well. So we use that with our teachers. Or in this case, a lot of students didn't get science in the last year, so maybe where they need to start if they kind of missed out on some things. Let me go here. Okay. And then I link this in for anybody who's newer to the engineering design process. So this is the process we took the teachers through, and this is the process that the teachers take the students through repeatedly in the STEAM program this summer. And what Nahal and I did, and another ELD TOSA, we took this process and then we essentially created a structure for teachers to use to transfer to any engineering challenge that they might have with students. So we're going to talk to you more about sort of what those steps look like. In a very busy slide. This one is a lot of words, we know. But you can see that the same process is here. Ask, define the problem, identify constraints, imagine, brainstorm, select, plan, create, prototype, test, improve, iterate, and then communicate. So essentially what we did was create a structure with the teachers, and then we took them through it in our model lesson. Do you want to speak more to this, Nahal?
So what we did with ELD is we looked at the ELD standards, which are linked for you right in that center where it says ELD. That's a link to the ELD standards. And we just went through the ELD standards and thought about what what language the students would need to be able to participate in those areas of the engineering process. And what you're going to see next are going to be some of the strategies that we thought could fit anywhere within a science lesson. And just so you know, we're going to be just showing you what we're doing, but we do have our entire slide deck we did with our teachers in a file for you. So and it is full of information and links and strategies and explanations about the strategies. So there's so much more you can learn and dive into, but we just wanted to kind of show you the what and the how and the why of what we brought to our teachers to get their brains thinking about linking the science and the ELD. So a big part of this summer is the collaborative piece, because they're building, they're working together. So you'll see that repeated a lot underneath these areas, but also communicating what they've learned, and also the negotiating piece, that giving their opinions, listening for others' opinions, supporting their own opinions, all of that comes into play when they are part of the engineering design process. So we are going to give you 5 strategies that we, again, thought fit right into the science and engineering process, something teachers can plug in anywhere when they're teaching this summer. And also our goal is for them to take these strategies into their classrooms next year. So many of the strategies you're going to see are GLAD instructional strategies. GLAD stands for Guided Language Acquisition Development, and our district is getting our teachers trained with BGLAD. So there's BGLAD and there's Project GLAD. They're essentially the same strategies, but they're really great for integrating content and language. We also provided resources to help students with communication, collaboration, building their background knowledge, and acquiring content-specific language. Next slide, please. So this first one are the GLAD 7 hip pocket tools. These are engagement techniques. They're interactive, they're easy to use, there's no cost, no prep, and they can really be applied to any lesson with direct instruction. This PDF is linked for you. And this is kind of the first place. So you're all coaches here, and this is the first place we would start with teachers, because this is no prep. It's not overwhelming. There's 7 super simple strategies that are 7 super simple tools that are high leverage, that really can help make the science content comprehensible for our English learners. And so on here, I'm sure there's tons of these teachers are already doing, being consistent, even something like say it with me, read it with me, do it with me, to build that oral language development, these small, tiny techniques that can go a long way. Next slide, please. Sorry if it feels like we're rushing through this. We just we cut this down like to a third of what we presented. So we're trying to give you your biggest bang for your buck here. And then I'll let you talk about this first, Jen, this chart.
Okay, perfect. So if you use a clues chart, then you know all about it. But if you don't, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the clues chart, which is something that we've started using, especially with our elementary students. So it's sort of like a new spin on the KWL chart, but really linking, in this example, it links to phenomena with NGSS. So they really think about the phenomena. They see the phenomena first, and then they think about what they're learning. They, over time, will build evidence as they move through a unit or a series of lessons. They can put up their wonderings, and then this is another piece that's really useful for ELD is scientific concepts and words. So oftentimes we'll use sticky notes with students if they're in person and they can, write on a sticky note and then stick it up on the wall. This would be a big, chart paper you might make on your wall, like an anchor chart. And then continue to come back to it. So in this model lesson we did with the teachers, we continued to come back to the clues chart throughout the lesson to build the collective understanding of the group and be really intentional about the way we supported students throughout the whole design process with their language and with their questions, helping them create good questions, and then thinking about when they did it, they also thought about how to make their design better. So kind of continuing to develop their understanding. Nahal?
So this is a chart where this is how we presented it to teachers. Here's your science. This is what you're going to do. Come back, build their understanding around the unit for, well, in this case, it's energy. And then a little ELD tip. So if students are writing on Post-its, first of all, it's an assessment because that is in a way that you can easily see their authentic language, their grammar, their word choice, all of that. And going back to the chart, you have 2 minutes before recess. You can go back and process the chart in terms of grammar. So using students' authentic language and doing a little mini lesson from that. And we also put a little 7-hit pocket tools icon because this is a great place to use that. So you can color code the chart when you're reading it. You can say it with me, do it with me, come up with gestures, have students prove when they have evidence. Well, how do you know that? Where did you learn that, etc. So finding these little areas where we can intentionally develop their language.
And then I just linked in, this is an example of a clues chart from our PD last week with teachers. And these are all teacher things that we quickly put in because we had planned way too much for the short amount of time we had. But this one I modified for engineering design challenge. Since it really is not phenomena based, you can modify the chart. There were actually teachers on there who were thinking about using it in slightly different ways. But in this case, I put, what do we know about the problem? What are the constraints to really support the students to think through what the constraints are? Because with design challenges, sometimes they don't really know why they're doing it, what they're doing, or what their constraints are. So it supports the students to really walk away ready for what they're going to do. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then and then this piece is also just an example from our PD session last week. So at this point, we're only showing a very small snippet of what we did for time reasons, but at this piece was the improve. So remember that cycle we went through, the ask, define. They just sort of decided which solution they were going to do, and they built it, and then they tested it, and then they were going to improve it. So with the student hat, we revisited the clues chart together to really think about what they're learning, if there's evidence from their tests to sort of start to develop evidence statements. So with the older students, you can use this to help sort of be the basis for CERs, creating claim evidence reasoning statements based on the data that they're collecting or they're testing. And then we had them do a feedback protocol together. And so for this piece, they went into their breakout rooms, and it was a very shortened feedback protocol because of time again. But teaching students to give and receive feedback is really important. And slowing down the engineering design process is important for, I think, all students to actually make meaning out of what they're doing and learning, but also especially for English learners. So they can really slow down, reflect on their learning, and connect the authentic language to meaningfully and really develop language. So there are this particular program actually had them move through like design, engineering process, you know, challenge, like day after day after day. But we kind of slowed it down and encourage teachers to be really intentional with the language supports for students. So we wanted to share that with you there. And then I think that you're speaking to this one, Nahal.
Yes, so we haven't talked about the strategies yet, but here Jen was talking about improving, right? And if you look at the bottom right where it says negotiating, you'll see on the next slide, I don't know what happened to the order of our slides. We might be off, but on the next slide, you'll see where we took that little negotiating, those sentence frames from. And so really making it clear, like just like we make connections for our students in the classroom, that's what we're trying to do for our teachers. Instead of just handing them a sheet that has sentence frames on it, we are making that connection. Negotiating, when they're improving during the engineering process, they're negotiating with each other. Here are some frames for negotiating. Practice these with your students. They say it with you, they do it with you. Make sure they're comfortable with these statements so that when they're negotiating with each other, they are using these statements and they've practiced them enough and they're comfortable enough with them so that the process, so that they're able to clearly communicate with each other and they develop that language. So we have the language to participate there. And also we have learning logs. It would be a great time to revisit the learning logs when they're improving. But again, we're going to show you that strategy. We just haven't yet. So I'll end there and then I'll talk more about it when we get to that strategy. So this here, these are two PDFs from Kate Kinsella, and we have exchanging ideas, collaborating about ideas, and then the language for academic discussion and collaboration. So again, as you saw on the slide before, we cut this into pieces and where we thought it would be appropriate just for now. Obviously, it's a teacher choice, right? They don't have to use those sentence frames, but just to show them that connection, we took pieces of these PDFs and plugged them in where we saw fit so that they can see that connection between the language and what the students are doing when engaging in the content, with the content. Next slide, please.
Sorry, all those are linked, and when I click on them, they move.
Yes, they're all linked for you. This is also from Kate Kinsella, the 4 L's of productive partners. So being really explicit, just like the we'll show you a strategy on explicitly teaching collaboration in groups of 3 and 4, but even being productive partners. So really being explicit, especially with your English learners, on what they're doing when they are in pairs. So looking at your partner's eyes, leaning towards your partner, maybe 3 feet apart right now, lowering your voice and really listening attentively. And then part of GLAD in general, the guided language acquisition development instructional model, is like being able to paraphrase and repeat back what your partner said with their permission so that they really start to listen, like they really start developing those active listening skills. And we want, everything we're trying to do is we're trying to take away that passive learning and making it really active learning and metacognitive. Next slide, please. So here is, so the first, we had the 7 hip pocket tools, and then we had some PDFs for Kate Kinsella and using the language to participate. This is a GLAD strategy. We don't have time to get into it, but I'm actually going to have Jen click on it. We did it with our teachers, and this is a great way for English learners or all your students really to either build background knowledge before they start a unit, have the language to, build background knowledge or activate background knowledge. And it's essentially just looking at photos that are related to the unit and then making an observation, a prediction, and asking a question. When they are doing this, they are doing it in pairs and they're kind of going around the classroom looking at different photographs. It has a really low effective filter. They can draw a picture. Obviously, when you're doing it online, it's hard to draw, but if they observe something within a picture and they want to draw, they can write a word, a phrase, a sentence, and that's also an authentic assessment for you to see, not only for the content, to see what do my students know about these photos. Someone says, oh, that's a solar panel. That's a lot more than maybe someone that has no idea and just draws a solar panel. I don't know. So it can give you content assessment and also language assessment. And you can go on to the next slide if you'd like, because I'm going to just keep talking about this. You see there, here are some actually student examples. So you see their level of writing, and then from there you can give them a +1. So if a student's drawing a picture, you can ask them to label it, or if they're labeling, tell me in a phrase or a sentence. And when they are working together, I'm kind of going into the strategy now because it's so hard not to, but when they're working together, they share a pencil. And so it really pushes, these little tiny tips really push that collaboration between them and their partner. They have to talk to each other. They only have one pencil and agree upon an observation, a prediction, and a question, and then write it. So it encourages that academic discourse.
But not in COVID, sorry. They don't have a shared pencil.
They can't share a pencil. Okay, and the next one is, we did this with our teachers, but it's a T-chart on collaboration. It's essentially your expectations chart. So a lot of times we put students in groups, okay, talk. They don't know how to talk. They don't know what that looks like, what that sounds like. And you come back to this chart frequently. So we did this with our teachers so they could get a feel for doing it with their students. And then if you go to the next slide, Jen, please. So this is one on cooperation. You could do it with any skill. So ours was collaboration for the summer, and really making it explicit. What does it look like? What does it sound like? So if I come in my room and my eyes are closed, what am I going to hear if there's collaboration going on? Or if I plug my ears and I can't hear anything, what am I going to see around the room when collaboration is happening? Making it really concrete for our learners. And then after they work together, you bring them back and you ask, how did your team show collaboration? And they have to prove how their team worked together. Oh, we went around and everybody shared their idea. And then, you could do your classroom management, put a star, whatever, give them team points. And this is a living chart. So when things come up, oh, we did this and that's collaboration, but it's not on the chart, students can go up and add to it. So really simple, high leverage strategies that go a long way. And the next one is the Cognitive Content Dictionary. Lots of vocabulary, right? With science, some of your students might not even know some of the terms for the engineering process at all. So the Cognitive Content Dictionary is another GLAD strategy. And this is where you introduce tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary. So essentially you introduce the vocabulary word and the students make a prediction and then give a clue. Again, that metacognition, why is this your prediction? Do you have a clue? And then throughout the process of reading and writing and using context clues and finding the definition, they come back, write the definition, and then they say an oral sentence with their team. So just basically a vocabulary chart done really well. We thought was another high leverage that we wanted to bring to our teachers. And finally, our learning logs, which is essentially like kind of a science notebook. Also, Jen and I were talking about how those are similar and where they're different. and it's essentially blank paper, and it's a way for students to process. So after they're watching a video on content, science content, or after they build something, or after direct instruction, they can come back and they can kind of process in a way that makes sense to them. And again, that's an authentic assessment for you. So I'm going to stop there because we need to wrap up. So you have our emails. If you have any questions about what we just plowed through, email us.
Yes, we have packed a lot in. Sorry, it's not that interactive. I just want to add that all of these strategies are great strategies. They're not just for English learners. They're good strategies for all students. And I think that a big piece of the learning logs, how they're essentially there's an access point for all students. So all students can engage in it. And also it creates a classroom culture that's supportive of collaboration and everybody participating in a way that's meaningful, which you also really need in a STEAM classroom or a science classroom because they're so collaborative and hands-on. So I just want to highlight that. I see Emmy has unmuted. Emmy, do you want to share? Please do.
Yes, I'm just really enjoying this part because we feel that for the learning to help kind of solidify with our sweet little learners that they need to reflect on it. And this feels like an additional part that's a natural fit with the reflection for any of your science and engineering things that you're having your students do. So anyways, I just want to tap into that. I thought that was great, but tying real strongly the language part and starting with some visuals and letting them have that relevance and tying it in. So yeah, that's a nice, easy way for all teachers, especially for your ELD, your English language students, to grab onto the language and develop it further through the content. Don't make them feel like two separate things. And that's what is important. Make it feel a natural part of the learning. So everyone's on board. So I just want to point that out. I like that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
We totally agree with you. Slowing it down and giving students time to really go through each piece of the process is really important for their learning. And I don't remember who said this, but some people say that if you don't reflect on it, you may not have even learned it. So reflecting is so important. Thank you for pointing that out. We just wanted to share sort of where we're going with this. I want to point out that actually in our district, it's not very common for TOSAs to collaborate and integrate together. So, so I don't know if your district is like that. Just, I think that there is a lot of value to add for teachers, for students, for your district, for like the overall culture of an organization to collaborate more, especially if we're asking kids to do it, then we should be doing it too. So working with Nahal and Andrea also has been fantastic. And so we're continuing to work together. We're in the middle of science adoption, piloting all that for elementary, middle, and high school. So ensuring that we bring the ELD piece to that, and not all curriculum is strong in that. So ensuring that we continue to collaborate is a big piece of that. And then continuing to deepen our work together with the STEM and using it as a leverage for authentic language. And that's it. That's our question.